Being one of Vladimir Putin's senior military commanders may come with power, money, and protection, but lately, it also appears to come with something else: fear. For years, Russia's top military figures have operated from behind layers of security. But a recent explosion at a Moscow restaurant has raised disturbing questions about whether those protections are actually enough. And if you enjoy stories that go beyond the headlines and uncover the details behind major military events, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because this story gets more complicated the deeper you go. The incident happened at Balzi Rossi, an upscale Italian restaurant in central Moscow. The location was hardly insignificant. It was a place frequented by wealthy Russians, businessmen, and senior officials. On August 1st, a private gathering was reportedly taking place there to celebrate the birthday of Russian Colonel General Alexander Chayko. According to reports, a woman arrived carrying what appeared to be a gift. Security personnel stopped her and attempted to inspect the package. Then came the explosion. The blast was reportedly powerful enough to kill several people and injure many others. Investigators also reportedly discovered ball bearings among the explosive material, suggesting that the device may have been designed to cause maximum damage. But the biggest question wasn't simply who died. It was who was supposed to die. Chayko was an important figure in Russia's military establishment. He had commanded Russian forces in Syria and later became commander of Russia's aerospace forces. His military career has also made him a controversial figure in the wars fought by Russia, particularly because of his association with operations in Syria and Ukraine. That made him a potentially significant target. But here's where the story becomes much more mysterious. Reports began circulating that other senior Russian military figures may have been present at the gathering. One name connected to those reports was Lieutenant General Igor Yerasalimov. Some reports claim that he died shortly after the restaurant explosion, although conflicting information subsequently appeared about his status. Another unnamed Russian general was reportedly buried under heavy security. If you're following this story, tell me in the comments. Do you think the restaurant explosion was simply an attack on one individual, or could something much bigger have been happening? The uncertainty surrounding Chayko himself only added fuel to the speculation. Some reports suggested members of his family were affected by the blast. Other reports claimed relatives died from their injuries. At the same time, questions emerged about why Chayko himself had not immediately appeared publicly following the incident. None of this, however, proves that Chayko was killed, and that's an important distinction. There have been conflicting reports, speculation, and claims from sources with different levels of reliability. Russia has not publicly confirmed that Chayko died in the bombing. Ukraine, meanwhile, has not officially claimed responsibility for the attack. So at this point, the real story is not simply that two Russian generals were assassinated. The real story is that a major security breach appears to have occurred in the heart of Moscow, and the circumstances surrounding it remain unclear. And this isn't happening in isolation. Russia has experienced a series of attacks targeting senior military figures in recent years. One of the most prominent cases occurred in December 2024 when Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's chemical, biological, and radiological defense forces, was killed in Moscow by an explosive device. In April 2025, Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik was killed by a car bomb. Another senior officer, Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov, was also killed in a separate bombing. There have also been reported attempts against other Russian commanders, although the details surrounding some of those incidents remain disputed. Together, these events have created an uncomfortable reality for Russia's military leadership. The danger isn't necessarily thousands of miles away on a battlefield. It can potentially reach them at home. And that creates a very different kind of fear. Because how do you protect someone from an enemy who may know where they live, where they travel, who they meet, and where they are going? Reports have suggested that Russian military personnel were advised to take basic precautions, avoid sharing personal information, change routines, alter phone numbers, and become more careful about people repeatedly appearing along their routes. But if an attacker has already penetrated a heavily secured city like Moscow, those precautions may not provide much comfort. The Kremlin has repeatedly blamed Ukraine for attacks inside Russia, but responsibility for the Balzi Rossi explosion has not been independently established. And that uncertainty is perhaps the most important part of this entire story. Because whether the attack was carried out by Ukrainian operatives, another group, or someone else entirely, one message has already been delivered to Russia's military elite. Security in Moscow may not be as absolute as they once believed. And for commanders who have spent years directing military operations from behind layers of protection, that realization could be deeply unsettling. The war in Ukraine has created enormous pressure on Russia's military leadership. Now, the possibility that the conflict can reach directly into the Russian capital adds another dimension to that pressure. So what happens next? Will Russia reveal exactly who was inside that restaurant? Will Alexander Chayko appear publicly and put the rumors to rest? And will investigators ever establish who planted the explosive device? If you want me to break down what we actually know, what remains unconfirmed, and the biggest unanswered questions surrounding this Moscow explosion, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments. Because sometimes the most important part of a military story isn't what governments tell us. It's what they leave unexplained. And right now, there are plenty of unanswered questions surrounding Balzi Rossi.